Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. Hi, folks. On today's episode of the Riderflex podcast from Flex Solutions, we have guest Dr. Matt Bilsky, the founder and president. Flex Solutions is disrupting the robotics market with an inexpensive snake-like robot, improving worker safety and efficiency. They're the makers of FlexBot, a low-cost 3D printed snake-like robot for inspection and repair, which can extend and rotate in 3D with the ability to lock out and brace for high-load activities on live equipment and hard-to-reach spaces. If you're into robotics, you're going to enjoy my conversation with Matt. So before we get into Flex Solutions, can you give the listeners, just tell them about you, Matt, the person, family, where you grew up, some personal stuff, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a Pennsylvania native, born and raised. I'm from originally a town called Upper Dublin, which is about an hour, 45 minutes northeast of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And then ended up here in Bethlehem. I went to Lehigh University for undergrad, and I never left. So this is, I think, my 12th year here in South Bethlehem.
Oh, wow. You've seen professors come and go.
Yes. And then I became one, and I came and went too. So I went undergrad through faculty at Lehigh. So I did undergrad, master's, PhD, did the faculty thing for a couple of years, and then left to be a full-time entrepreneur. And I'm coming to you here from the Ben Franklin Technology Ventures incubator building here, which is ironically on Lehigh's campus, but it's the state-run incubator network here in Pennsylvania. So okay. I now have a Lehigh office, even though I'm no longer at Lehigh.
Wow. Are they making you pay rent?
Yes, but it's very well proportioned. So that's the whole goal here of the incubator network in Pennsylvania. Is Ben Franklin here to help early companies like ours exist, kind of keep the bills low, but give us nice facilities.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, very good. All right. Now, your family's near there, right? So when you move to Colorado, you're moving away from everybody, I guess.
Exactly. They get it, though. They know that I'm a skier, I'm a kayaker, I'm a mountain biker, and I've always had a heart out there. I've always made it a week or two out west every year. But Pennsylvania's got a lot of benefits, and my career is basically started here, but we'll see where the future goes for sure.
What'd your folks do?
My mom is a CPA. She originally was actually a partner at a firm in Philadelphia. And then when I was in elementary school, and I have a younger sister who's about 3 years younger,
okay.
She's basically moved her practice to the house so she could spend more time with us.
Okay.
And has kind of continued that to this day. And she's got a very interesting practice where she's got some kind of big clients that she ends up doing kind of a mix of tax returns, but also financial planning, business planning, succession planning. So she always has interesting days.
Okay. Very good. How about your dad?
And he's a physician. He's internal medicine, so your family physician, but he's a dinosaur in the sense of he still is a sole practitioner, not affiliated with the hospital. So he'll have made it his whole career kind of running his show.
Wow, really? Okay. Now, was it a small town, this town you were from? What was the population?
I could Google it for you. I mean, my high school graduating class was 400 or 500, I think.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if your dad was one of those family doctors in town where, like, when you go to the grocery store, like, everybody knows him. You're like, hey, doc, I got this pain in my arm. Can you tell me?
Not really. I'm from more of the burbs. His practice is right on the border of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And so he's always kind of, you might have heard of Germantown, like those sort of places, Cheltenham,
okay.
Those Philadelphia cities.
Okay. And he's still practicing, huh?
Yep, both are still working, but slowly transitioning to more play and consolidated work.
Okay. So your dad was a doctor, your mom was a CPA, and so in finance and accounting. Did either one of those, you know, weigh on you when you were trying to decide, what to major in? Because I know you're an engineer basically, right? So you majored in engineering all the way through your undergrad, graduate school, doctorate. You didn't want to be a physician like your dad.
I mean, the short answer is no. The long answer is I don't know if my dad would have let me.
Oh, really? Okay.
I know that you folks are very involved in hiring and all this stuff, and
Right.
has changed a lot since he started practicing, and he's seen how the healthcare system and all of this has transitioned, and
Mm,
it's not the you go to medical school, the linear career trajectory that it was when your generation, his generation, all kind of considered medical school.
got you.
Um, Plus, I'm just an engineer's engineer. Everybody knew from the age, from age 2 or 3 that I was going to be an engineer, tinkering at basement workshop. And even before I could build what was in my head, I would mock it up. And for better or for worse, my sister's dolls might have gotten a little bit of abuse with testing zip lines and stuff. But
So you were doing that early on. You were taking stuff apart. You were one of those kids that was like, the laptop covers off. You're looking inside. You were one of those guys.
well, there's a funny story of when I was, I would say 4, and my sister was 1. And so my mom's got her, and we're in Heckinger's. That's how old the story is, the hardware store. And I'm having a meltdown over some extension cord I wanted. And like, my mom's just standing there holding my little sister. I'm having a meltdown over an extension. So, I mean, that's just, I've always, I loved as a kid Home Depot gift cards. That was my thing.
I
So
see.
it's always kind of been that way.
Okay. Okay. By the way, what was the extension cord for? Do you remember?
I
You
was not allowed to plug things in the outlets when I was a little kid. So I loved the vacuum cleaner, and I would uncoil it, plug it into the sofa, and coil it back up. So I'm sure it was just to
I see.
have an extension cord to tinker with. I don't know.
So curiosity, right? I mean, so you were a very curious kid. You wanted to know what makes that work. How does that work? I want to figure that out. That was you.
Exactly. I mean, I've always kind of been a divergent thinker, and everybody's busy looking at the art exhibit, and I'm looking at the electrical panel next to it as to how they're lighting it up. Um,
Oh, okay. All right, great. So in high school, did you know you were going to major in, mechanical engineering? Did you know, like your senior year, you just knew that was it for you?
Not necessarily. I think there's a lot of irony in me becoming a faculty member and an academic in some senses, because yeah, in middle school, high school, I was probably, the technical term is slacker.
Oh, really? Really? Yeah.
For
I
sure.
just figured you were a straight A student all the way through.
That was my sister, not me.
Oh, okay.
No, I had mastered the A minus B plus, because I
Okay.
was always, the projects are what excited me, the inventing, all of that. And so, I mean, as an adult, I've learned that you got to balance the fun stuff with the actual assignment.
Mm,
And
mm.
as my life has gotten busier, calendar, and there's not the time to wait until 2 a.m. before it's due. But yeah, I mean, I think, and I was also conflicted because early on I was in middle school, high school, fixing computers for people,
Okay.
doing handyman work and billing decent. And we didn't have a real shop program in high school. We didn't
Okay.
have
Okay.
a lot of that stuff, unfortunately. I mean, when I was a freshman, we did have this intro to engineering class, and we got to put together these little popsicle stick bridge and a couple of other things like that. And of course, that was really up my alley. And that's the class I got an A in, because that's what I was all about.
Gotcha.
But I think physics is what really caught my attention for sure, of all of the sciences.
Mm.
Chemistry and I weren't friends. Bio, which when we talk about me being a doctor, not really my thing, but physics just clicked with me of, I drop this and that's physics, and we can come up with some equations and really the mechanics side. So it became, coming from a data-driven family, I guess, that the logical conclusion is that I'm going to go be a mechanical engineer.
I see. Okay. All right. Now, what did you know you were going to be an entrepreneur at this stage, or when did you think, wow, I'm gonna take all this curiosity and my degree and I'm gonna start my own business, or did that just kind of happen as you moved through your education?
Well, I've always had, I guess, an entrepreneurial mindset, and
Okay.
I'll pull out a little bit of Lehigh. We were involved in this program called Keen, and their goal was to pair an engineering skill set of making, measuring, and modeling with an entrepreneurial mindset
Okay.
of curiosity, connections, and creating value. And
Mm,
I've always had that curiosity, that building connections and looking for value and inventing and things like that. And being self-employed when I was a kid with my own handyman business and my own computer repair. So I always had that entrepreneurial spirit,
okay.
and coloring in the lines was never my forte. Um,
Gotcha.
but yeah, to answer the question, I guess the trajectory I'm on with starting this company and all really started end of undergrad, going into grad school.
Okay.
I had been identified by a faculty member I was working with that, oh wow, this kid can make stuff. And he's like, oh, maybe I'll pay for your grad school and get you a free master's if you'll come and work on stuff with me. And I was like, okay, sure. That's hard to say.
Okay, so almost like a trade of services a little bit.
Well, I mean, that's what free
Yep.
grad school is essentially.
Gotcha.
Um,
All right.
these students work on a faculty's project in exchange for their tuition, stipend, all that.
I see. Okay. All right.
And so basically, long story short, that funding fell through.
Oh,
And it became kind of apparent that the real funding in higher ed is for PhDs, not master's students, because it's the same notion of when you hire somebody, you'll spend a year training them just for them to leave in a year. The onboarding is extremely expensive, and then you don't recoup those costs.
okay.
That's what a master's student essentially is. With they're busy taking classes and you're busy onboarding them, and in 1 to 2 years they're gone. Versus a PhD student, 1 to 2 years of classes for the masters, and then you have 3 years of them generating value for the research program.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay. All right.
And so basically I found a traditional PhD program where I found a faculty member. He was willing to pay for 4 or 5 years of tuition, a full stipend, 12 months, good to go.
Nice.
Tried it and wasn't my thing.
Oh.
Just working on somebody else's project that I wasn't deeply passionate about just didn't click. And it just so happened that the College of Engineering needed somebody to help teach the first year programming class. And the department chair knew that from me doing some work for the department, writing courses and other stuff prior to grad school, that I'm the guy who could do that. And so basically he called up the guy I was working for and said, hey, can he teach this? And reluctantly, they basically let me teach that class. And that all of a sudden changed everything, because now my tuition and stipend was paid for teaching, not for researching. And you have a 20-hour contract of teaching,
Okay.
and that's all you're allowed to work, which the entrepreneur in me said, wait, if you're paying me to teach, then I'm volunteering to research. And if I'm volunteering to research, why do I have to do somebody else's research? Why can't I do my own? And that thought experiment was really what set me on the trajectory to us talking today.
Wow.
I approached a gentleman named John Oakes, who had built and ran the technical entrepreneurship program here at Lehigh, both our undergraduate capstone and a newly formed master's of technical entrepreneurship. And I approached him with that same quandary of, well, can I teach my way through a PhD and then start a company and invent something and fund my research? And he said, well, why can't you? And that's what created this whole program that I call an entrepreneurial minded dissertation, or an EMD, that to my knowledge, I'm kind of the first person who has had this experience. And I always, whenever I'm giving a talk on this or something, say that with my sources. Nobody's ever corrected me. So somebody can welcome to chime in and said, oh, I did the same thing. So the notion of my EMD was I managed to teach my way through the PhD. I was a teaching assistant initially for the first year programming class, and then for the capstone, which provided me full tuition, full stipend. Then I formed my first company, Impossible Incorporated LLC, because I always wanted a company called Impossible Incorporated here in South Bethlehem, where we have startup programs like the Keystone Innovation Zone for economic development that give grants to technology startups to help them work. So I wrote grants through the company to support the research. And then the kicker of all of this is if you go through Lehigh's intellectual property bylaws, if you use resources commonly available to all students, which I did, and you're paid to teach, not research, which I was, and you pay for the research, not money coming through Lehigh, then you own your intellectual property.
How about that? That's great. Okay, excellent. Wow. You figured out that curiosity that you had as a young man and tinkering with stuff, and then your relationship skills and your ability to maneuver through faculty and administration to get things done and make deals. That great job. I mean, you figured out, did you come out of school with no debt, by the way? I'm just curious. I'm guessing you did.
I came out of grad school with no debt, and thanks to what we call the Bilsky Scholarship, aka thank you, Mom and Dad, they supported me through undergrad.
That's great. I mean, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, you started a company, you got all the way through, got your doctorate, and you just hustled and you made connections and you weren't afraid to ask people for things that were different. And I love that. A lot of people, they just give up right there, right? They're like, oh, well, that's not how it works. And you're like, well, I think maybe it can work this way. And I'm going to push some doors open and figure it out. I love that. Great.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean,
So now you're doctor, right? Okay. So now you're Dr. Bilsky, right? And you got this, you got Flex Solutions. Is Flex Solutions is the parent company? Is that correct?
Yeah. So Flex Solutions is the robotics company that I'm president, CEO, and living the dream with right now.
All right. And everybody's going to wonder, like, okay, so how did you bootstrap that yourself? How'd you, well, I know that you were working on it while you were in school, but now that that's over and you're not getting any, I'm guessing there's no more assistance from the college. How are you surviving now? Did you take on some cash, or how are you funding it? If you don't mind sharing a few details.
Yeah. So I was faculty through the end of 2018 and scrolled away a bunch of money to the best of my abilities.
Great.
And then starting January 1, didn't get a paycheck for 9 months.
Oh.
And tried to consult some. I am a licensed professional engineer, and I had started looking into a little bit of consulting, but really it was skinning by, and I guess the 3 F's, borrowing from family and friends a little bit, to get up until kind of the end of August, when ended up closing a little bit of a deal with an angel and got into a startup accelerator where money actually started coming in. I had this notion, I spent the whole idea of what we're doing now with low cost robotics was a true pivot in the business that happened the end of October before I left Lehigh.
Okay.
And so I finished an initial prototype early 2019 and then went pencils down. I got to the point in which the demo videos, if you go online today, you'll see is got some wires on it. It's enough to show the robot moving, the concept, but not nearly a polished version. And what I realized, and I think this is a very important thing for technical entrepreneurs like me, is that at a certain point, nobody cares about the hardware or the invention. They care about the product market fit. What are you doing? Who are you doing it for? And why do they care? And so I went pencils down as soon as I finished that prototype in March and spent 6 months doing nothing but business development. Because I had that realization that building a better robot isn't going to get me funding. working on identifying customers and end users and all of that. That's what's going to get me into a startup accelerator.
And solving a need. Is this why, by the way, I'm pretty sure this is a newer website from the first time I talked to you.
It is. We launched it about a week ago.
Okay. Okay. Last night and this morning when I was doing prep for the podcast, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a new website. And I can see it's very clearly targeted at, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Consumer, or, this is how I'm going to help you. I'm going to save you time. I'm going to save you money, etc. I mean, it's targeted at that instead of, like you said, the robot itself. So everything you're saying matches the website that I saw this morning.
And I got to give kudos to Jill. I just hired my first employee. She's Flex Solutions Director of Operations.
Gotcha.
And she's got 20 plus years experience working with growing companies, and
Great.
has done a phenomenal job of converting the ramblings of a inventor into a cohesive story that I guess is matching.
Love
that
it.
is a testament to her.
By the way, there's a good tip for the listeners right away. If you're a startup entrepreneur, surround yourself with people that can complement your skill set, right? It's so critical.
That was in hiring her and in looking for the job. If I had to, at the most superficial level, describe the person I was looking for, it's the yin to my yang.
Yep.
Somebody who gets as excited about slide decks as I do gearboxes. Like the equivalent.
All right. So now you're in this accelerator. You had a little bit of angel money, I think, plus you had some money from a grant, I think, too. Is that right?
Yeah, we've to date raised about $255,000 in non-dilutive grant funding.
Yeah, that's
supported by the state of Pennsylvania. I'm heavily involved in this program called the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Technology Alliance, PETA, with an I, and their goal is to partner companies with technologies with Lehigh University and Carnegie Mellon University, so that students can be exposed to these sort of projects and do research for them. And from an economic development standpoint, those grants are matched 2-to-1 by the companies. So it's helping to prevent the brain drain. It's keeping people like me and the students working on these projects in Pennsylvania to help, economic development.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the fact that you've managed to gather that much cash and not give away a bunch of equity is phenomenal. And so that's how you're living. That's how you're eating. That's how you got the company started. Now you're moving to Boulder. So what are next steps now for Matt? He comes to Boulder. He's working with the accelerator. Now what? Are we going to roll out? We're going to finish FlexBot. We're going to roll out new items. Talk to me about the plan.
Right. So the Startup Accelerator we got in starts at the end of February, and it's a 12-week program sponsored by the telecom industry with the goal of solving their problems with our technology. And our goal going into there and working with them is to really understand the first person who's going to use this and how do you get to that person, and whether it's, if we want to do looking towards doing funded trials with the telecoms, what level do we need to be at technically to begin working with them and doing pilot and field testing and things like that, and then looking to exit the accelerator demo days middle of May.
Okay.
And then I'll be back here while we kind of look towards the future. The goal would be, after the accelerator closes seed round, that'll take us from a proof of concept prototype that I can drive around and show people what it does to funding the actual go-to-market, making algorithms. I'd like to describe our user interface. The vision is similar to, you look at the new robotic vacuums and you have, it maps your house out real fast, and you can mark like, please don't go on my Persian rug. And you can, a user interface that's as intuitive as something like that, so anybody can pick it up. So we have to work on that. And then, of course, the hardware to, our vision is mass deployment, hundreds of thousands of units out there. And so taking what does well when I build one of them and doing the design for manufacture and kind of that supply chain and go to market.
Now, are you going to focus on FlexBot specifically, just that one unit until that really gets rolling before you build something else, or have you kind of decided what does that look like for additional robots? I guess is my question.
Right now, we're hyper focused on the FlexBot architecture.
Okay.
That's our core IP, this ability to extend and rotate. And that's what hopefully in the next 6 months, our patents will be issued around that technology.
Okay.
And so our vision with it is right now, the telecoms, this electricians, this notion of worker safety and increasing uptime and decreasing injuries, and also bringing robotics to the masses by lowering price is all hyper focused around the FlexBot. Our notion is then once we have those initial customers and we start generating revenue in that field, what's nice with robotics, something like this, and the way we're developing the software is that other applications can be written on top of it. It's almost, there's something called the robot operating system. We have this notion now of you buy a robot and it's the equivalent of buying an AI, like an Android phone, where anybody can write an app on top of it to do whatever they want. Or you go into a store these days and rather than, you used to see these fancy schmancy little scanners when you would go and buy something. Now they're all just like using an iPhone in a dock. So you have the core technology and then you're able to adapt it to additional use cases.
I see.
And that's what we'd be looking to do. I mean, ultimately, I think there's other avenues we could pursue going down, but that's distracting right now from our core goal of applying the FlexBot technology to these problems that we see in electrical and telecom.
Do you see every construction site across the country eventually having a FlexBot in the toolbox?
That's the vision. And I think what, kind of to analogize it, you would see, let's take drones, for instance, where even 5 or 10 years ago, let's use 5 years ago, if you wanted somebody to do aerial photography for you or to survey your roof, you'd have to go and hire somebody who'd fly this $30,000 drone. And it was never feasible for you to have a drone yourself. And that's where we're at with the majority of robotics these days. The average service robot is in the 50 grand range, which for many industries is doable, but for mass deployment there's 700,000 electricians in the US, 230,000 telecom workers, to make $1 million $60,000 robots is a lot of investment that I don't think you're going to see. But our vision is driving down the cost to where let's just say $1,000. Well, electricians and workers have thousands of dollars worth of tools, a screw gun, $200-$300. And that notion of at a certain price point, it becomes just another tool. And that's what we're trying to drive. Just how drones these days have gone from that $30,000 to you go into Best Buy and for $800 you walk away with a drone that you can't crash if you tried to. And that's where kind of we're looking to bring this technology of, my background is I was a licensed contractor. I supported my summers in grad school and started as an undergrad as superintendent of properties for one of the off-campus landlords here in Bethlehem. Going into junior year of college, I was moving into my first off-campus house and looking for a summer job and said, hey, do you guys need any help fixing things at the houses? They're like, well, we need help cleaning. Show up to clean the first day, start cleaning. Something was broken. Nobody had the tool. I'm like, I have the tool. Go and grab the tool. Next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I'm fixing everything that the college kids broke. So started with them with about 8 houses, became their first employee, became the superintendent, and grew them to about 35 houses in an apartment building over 5 years. And that's where all these problems came out. These are old Bethlehem steel houses, plaster and lath. And every time we'd finish a renovation, it'd be like, oh, we forgot to run cables. Do you mind pulling it? It's like, I could have done that last week. And so originally, FlexBot started out as this robot that would go in through an outlet-sized hole, drive through the wall, drill through every stud and joist, pop out the end and pull your wires without a mess, and was going to be targeted directly at electricians. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that transition at the end of 2018 to, well, instead of this $15,000, $20,000 expensive metal heavy-duty robot, well, can I make this for $1,000 and now figure out what we can do? And so many times in the field, I just have this vision of this time I was at this house and trying to fish a wire from one half of the attic to the other, and the joists were going the right way, just trying to push it. And there's this little notch that you just
Right.
couldn't get over. I spent 30 minutes just going. And if I had something like the flex spot that's just like, hold on,
Yeah.
it would solve so many of those problems of, oh, I wish I had. Not to mention, we have a problem here where one electrician dies in the US every day, and thousands are injured every year
I didn't know
from
that.
high voltage arc flashing.
I
So
didn't know
like
that.
you're working
Okay.
in your house, you accidentally touch the outlet, it hurts a little bit and the circuit breaker trips. Well, in these big power systems, we're talking hundreds or thousands of amps and 100,000 volts. So high voltage, high current, and arc flashing just jumps across. And we're seeing that workers are reluctant to wear the special clothing. And even with the special clothing, you have issues with it's uncomfortable, it smells, all this sort of stuff.
Mm.
And you contrast that with industries like the telecom industry, where a single minute of downtime can cost $8,000. So it's not like your internet service provider's gung ho on turning off the internet for the day so you can go and inspect the thing you have to do as a worker. And we really see this opportunity of giving workers the tools to get where they need to go safely and easily. And that's, I think, our big selling point is we're not at all looking to replace workers or take away jobs or automate. We have this whole subset of very skilled workers, telecom workers, electricians, who clearly in their mind know what has to happen. But there's a whole bunch of obstacles between them and the goal, be it safety or I just can't reach across the floorboard.
Mm-hmm.
And if we put one more tool in their tool chest that enables their lives to be done better and safer, that's what we're trying to do.
You know, everything ties together from your past, right? I think that I'm glad you talked about the fact that you were basically a handyman, because all the way from when you were a kid and you were curious and you're learning how to fix stuff, and then your engineering degree, and then you were basically a handyman doing some of that kind of stuff through college, and then you experienced these problems, and then your mind went right to, I know this can be done better. I bet I can figure something out to make this easier. I mean, it all ties together to bring you right where you're at today. It's not like you just said, oh, I'm going to start a business and create a FlexBot tool. You created it from all of your experiences, and you've experienced what it's like to be that guy that's trying to thread that cable through the wall. You've done it.
Right.
And I love that. I mean, you can speak right to the experience. But by the way, we're going to have to make sure we figure out how to get this podcast on some kind of, electrician type podcast or something, where the guys that are listening to you talk going, hey man, when can I order one of those? I want to order one of those right now. By the way, have you gotten any of that? Has anybody called you and said, when can I buy one?
I have so many friends over the years who are like, I've been putting off running this until your robot's done, and electricians I've worked with and contractors. 2-3 weeks ago, I had a buddy from kayaking who called me, who does home inspections, saying like, hey, do you have a 500-foot long inspection camera? We can't find anything longer than 300. And we got this drain that's going from plastic to terracotta. We can't go through it. It's like, well, I remember the time we had that same thing. And if I had FlexSpot on the end of one of these and could just shove it in, we'd be good to go. But give me a year.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to help with the fundraising, by the way, just knowing there's such a demand and that you would get orders probably right away. Can we talk a little bit? I want to just touch on the whole robotics and, this fear that people have that they're going to eliminate the jobs and things, because you kind of went down that path. And it's interesting. I just interviewed 2 guys from artificial intelligence last week, and that topic came up. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Because I feel your passion, and I can already tell that maybe somebody's challenged you on it, because you're already saying, hey, look, man, I'm going to build stuff to help you. I'm not building stuff to replace you. This is going to help you. Why are we afraid of that? Why are people scared that robots are going to take all the jobs? What do you think's causing that? And can just speak to that topic just for a minute, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much news and hype reports and things like that.
Right.
I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball, and if I had it, first I'd buy a lottery ticket, then I'd put some wagers in Vegas, and then I'd predict the economic future of the world. But I don't have that. But what I can fairly confidently predict that automation will significantly impact the workforce. It would be naive to think there's not going to be a
Agreed.
change.
Agreed.
I think society is starting to slow down with their expectations of we're going to have self-driving cars tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're going to necessarily initially have an autonomous truck that picks up a trailer and drops it off end to end. But I think it's much more reasonable to day one have a truck that drives down 80, and then you have workers who pick up and drop off the trailers. It doesn't. So before we get, the last mile is the difficult thing in everything, be it postage or, e-commerce, or even the driving and all of these other things. So that's things like that I could see being a shift. So I believe there is a long-term notion of, oh crap, I'm going to have to figure out what goes on. But by that same token, I think one of the things that we've really struggled with here in the US is the lack of trade education. And it might sound oxymoronic of, oh, he was a college professor at a top 50 school and is saying more people need to go to the trades. Well, it's true. You want to get anything done on your house these days.
Oh, it's
the lead time. You can't find an electrician.
I couldn't agree more. I don't mean to interrupt you right there, but as a recruiting firm for Riderflex, because that's what we do for a living is recruit talent, the hardest things we've tried to recruit are construction, electricians. Like we've recruited all kinds of positions the last 3 years. The one that we had trouble with is when somebody said, "Hey, can you find me an electrician?" It was almost impossible. To your point, sorry.
I appreciate the confirmation there.
Yeah.
And those are the jobs that automation is going to have so much trouble replacing for so long.
Right. Right. I mean, the chances of a robot driving up to the house, coming in your home with the electrician belt on and fixing a bunch of stuff and interacting with you and leaving. I mean, I'll be dead before that happens. I'm pretty sure.
And I mean, I would reckon that barring some massive change, it's not going to be me, maybe my children or their children.
Yeah.
And so much of this stuff requires dexterity. And just looking, the thing about old houses is they are unpredictable.
Right.
AI does great in, machine learning and all of this. They can learn from, but they do well in cookie cutter environments. A robot does great in a warehouse because it's a grid.
Great point.
When you have a house that's filled with old newspaper in the walls, it's not going to know what's going on, right? There's all sorts of things like that apprenticeships and that true knowledge. And driving it full back to our vision is the electricians and the contractors and the telecom workers are highly skilled. They have expertise that they've learned on the field and through their mentorship and their time there. And that can't be replaced anytime soon, at least.
Yeah.
With a machine.
I would agree. How about this? I was talking to a guy that works for a robotics company, and they don't make the robot itself, but they're making the, I don't know, for lack of a better word, the mind in the cloud. And he was describing how in the future, their thought was most robots or the unit, I guess, will not really have it won't have a computer inside its head. I'm sorry, I'm not using all the right language, but the unit won't have the processor inside the head. It will just it'll just connect through the internet and constantly be fed new information from the cloud. And that's how it'll do its continuous learning and so forth. Is that how you see it as well?
I think it's going to probably be a bell curve, if I had to guess.
Okay.
A shape like this, where early technology, everything happened on board. We didn't have the internet, all of that. We're now at a point where the cloud, large data centers, has made big computation inexpensive because you can just run it on those machines. But even though if you've heard of Moore's law, where your computer gets better like twice as good every 2 years, and people are saying, we've hit the limit of that, which is technically true, but we're coming up with alternative ways of making stuff smaller, more efficient, better. I think over time, the capabilities that will be built into a single chip will be able to just handle these sort of tasks. I think about Star Trek, The Next Generation, right? You look at Data. Okay, well, there's this massive computer, yet it's not like he's constantly going back and forth with it. His brain and him is smart enough to do what he has to do. Yeah. And so I think that technology will improve to where there'll be a mix of both. That the onboard capabilities will be just think of what your phone can do. Since smartphones, we're basically near the 10-year anniversary of the smartphone revolution. I guess 2007 was iPhone 1. So we're like 13 years into mass smartphone adoption. Android, I remember what was the Motorola Droid 1 was like 2009-ish.
Right. Yeah.
And so like, think of where we've come in 11 years or 12 years with what can fit in your pocket.
Right. It is amazing. It is amazing. I didn't mean to take you down that road of robots, but I mean, you're basically going to be in that kind of a business. And so, and I know people are fascinated by that, right? It's always a conversation I hear people talking about. Even my wife, she'll ask me who I'm interviewing on the podcast. And if it's anything to do with AI or robotics, she always wants to know, when robots are taking over the world. And I'm always telling her, calm down. I don't think that's anytime soon.
Right. And it'll be a very fascinating, larger economic discussion that is well beyond the point of this podcast.
Yep.
We'll leave that to the economists, the fiction writers.
So now pulling it back to your business and Flex Solutions. So, at this point now you're off and running. You're going to do your thing and get rolling. But can you give any advice to people that haven't gotten to this point yet? Maybe they're in college, they have an idea, they're tinkering around with something, they haven't made it as far as you've made it. Would you give those guys any advice?
There's tons of advice.
Yeah.
I think the first piece of advice that I'm going to give is everybody has an opinion and everybody has advice. And so this is my take on it. This is what I've heard, but so much of what I figured out is from asking 10 different people and combining that into a sense. But so just taking any one thing as an isolated statement and to be the truth is a fallacy and a dangerous game to play. So I'll put a disclaimer on my advice for that. I mean, general piece of advice, I think one of the things that's gotten me this far is reading the directions. It's one of these underrated things in life, but reading the directions, whether it was how I own my patents, I read the rules. The rule said X, Y, Z. Here is the directions on how to own your patents. And then I followed them. And so there are a lot of situations out here with so much of the stuff I've gotten wasn't even, it's not shady. It's not any of that. It was just, this is available. Here's the rules, just follow them. And so much stuff so the people you're talking to, the people you're trying to recruit are so busy applying to accelerators. I think for everything the federal government is, one of the things that they do quite uniquely is when you apply for a grant, there's a deadline and it's due that day. The only time they'll change that is they'll send out an email if like half the country's underwater and all the systems are down. They'll say, well, there's a natural event and we're postponing it. But it's like the U.S. Postal Service, rain nor sleet nor hail. Like it's due then. And then the next step it goes to is a team whose job it is to throw out anything that didn't follow the directions. You were supposed to make it single spaced and it's double spaced. Oh, you saved us reading it. Thank you. And maybe that's 1 degree harsher than everything else. At the same time, everybody kind of has to function like that. And when you're applying to these accelerators and looking for programs and stuff, really that attention to detail, that respecting the other person's time and effort really does come through. And I think that's something that I try to be very mindful of when working with other people and trying to make things work my way is, here's how their way works. Let's play their game and then adapt it as needed.
You're going to have to learn how to be a CEO on the fly for this deal too, right? Not only are you an inventor, not only are you an entrepreneur, but now now you have an employee. Pretty soon you're going to have more employees. Do you look forward to that, or are you dreading the business aspect of it and being the CEO and dealing with all of that? Are you thinking, I just want to invent stuff. I just want to work on the robot. I don't want to deal with all this business stuff. Where's your mind?
I can make a joke about it. I mean, I've been very fortunate in pretty much most careers and most aspects of my life. I've gotten to try things on before I buy them. So it's like, okay, I got to try being a faculty member. I got to try this, that, the other thing, but I'm excited to give it a shot and see how it feels and what it's like. I think it's something that intrigues me very much. I feel confident I do well presented the information, coming to a logical and good conclusion. Okay. And I think to be a good CEO, my plan is to surround myself with the right people who can balance out my talents with theirs to help give me the information I need to make good decisions.
Let's say you're interviewing somebody right now and let's say they meet the requirements or the skill set of whatever the job is you're hiring for. Tell me what personality or style you're looking for that will match the culture you want to build.
Well, I actually had a good list on the initial job posting of what I was kind of looking for and kind of our core values. But I think things that are very important to me personally are just honesty and anti-hypocrisy of do what you say what you do. Really, like, things happen in life. It's what you do afterwards that defines the type of person you are.
Oh, I like that.
And I mean, I really do believe that. And then I've had 53 students or so work on this project. So I've had a number of interns and stuff, and I can categorize interns and workers in two general categories.
Okay.
One category that you tell them to do X either gets done or they get to a difficult point and they immediately start texting on their phone. And then the other category is somehow they taught themselves how to figure it out, how to do it. And then somehow they're still, even if you didn't give them something else to do from your conversations, they manage to fill their day with productive tasks. And that self-drive and that initiative, I think, gets rarer and rarer every day.
It sure does. It sure does. It really does. The common sense to figure stuff out and work ethic are really the two things you touched on right there. And can I just highlight one other thing? You said, do what you said you would do. I've done a podcast segment on that. And that really lately, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, and maybe I'm turning into a curmudgeon or something. But I just get so annoyed when people say little things like, I'll call you tomorrow, and they don't. Or, yeah, I'll get that report to you by 3, and they don't. I'm amazed by it. Like that blows me away how commonplace that is in today's world, is people just saying something, casually saying, I will do X, Y, and Z, and they just don't.
I remember a family conversation. My sister studied applied math, econ, linguistics. So she's very linguistically inclined, and so is the rest of my family. And my dad can be literal. And one day we're sitting around, I don't know, dinner or something, and my sister informs my father that in the dictionary, the word literal means figurative now as a colloquialism. And but that's the point of, I was literally about to die. No, you weren't. I'm going to call you in 5 minutes. No, you aren't.
No,
it's
you aren't.
That same ism that seems to be more prevalent these days.
It is. And the work ethic too, like you mentioned, and that's a good tip for the listeners. If you'll just have the common sense to figure stuff out, if you'll get your ass up and hustle and have work ethic and do what you said you're going to do, if you just do those things, you're going to be successful in life, probably.
For sure. I mean, you gotta be careful. Never let your boss know how capable you are, because you can never go back. But
Oh man. Just two more. I just want to ask you a couple more questions. I know we're almost out of time. What has been the biggest hurdle so far? Like at this point right now, what was the scariest moment or the biggest hurdle so far?
I would say over the summer, when I was doing the business development, middle of June, July, I ended up kind of doing this whole thing backwards. And back to the whole advice, I spent my teaching career at Lehigh focused on our capstone design, which is integrated product development in a business context, customer-driven design. Go out, talk to your customers, figure out what their problems are, their needs are, generate a list of needs from that, metrics and target specifications, and then engineer to solve them, as opposed to the converse. And I found myself where initially, as an electrician, had this problem, running wires was a pain in the butt. Okay, I'm going to invent this robot. And then I switched to this low-cost plastic snake. Great. I created a plastic snake that does cool stuff. Who wants it? What do they want? What am I going to do it for? And then I found myself having to this uphill battle of finding a problem. It's a lot easier to have a problem and build a business around a problem and then solve it, rather than ending up in reverse, having solved it and then searching for a problem. And it was, and that still is in some ways what we're hoping to close that chapter on with this startup accelerator with the telecoms. But that's been the biggest hurdle of, oh crap, I'm now somebody with the technology in search of a problem.
How about that? That's great that you shared that, by the way. Wonderful advice, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's pretty authentic right there. Not a lot of guys would want to share that, right? Because it's like, yeah, I probably should have done it a little bit different, but you shared that, and I love it. That's great advice for the listeners. Okay, so right now, in one sentence or maybe one or two sentences, what is Matt's core purpose in life? If you had to define that, I like to ask that question. It's kind of it's a deep one, and I've been challenged on it myself. If you had to, go ahead.
That's a good. I think the best answer is when I formed Impossible Incorporated, which I still maintain as the commercial brand of me, consulting, product design, all of that.
Okay.
The mission statement for that, and kind of my mission statement, is solving life's wouldn't it be nice if problems.
I like it.
With novel engineering solutions. Because the corollary to that is the person best suited to solve a problem is the person who experiences it every day.
Ooh, that's good.
But the person worst suited usually to solve a problem is the person who experiences it every day. They know the problem. They feel it. They know, but they don't have the skill set necessarily to actually create that solution. And I've been gifted with the ability to see that and make anything that crosses my mind. And I enjoy, that's where my frustration in life comes from. I use tech a lot, but it pains me so much, not because of what it can do, but because of what I feel like it should be able to do.
I see.
And it doesn't. And solving all of those pain points is, if I could solve that, I will be fulfilled.
You know, that your passion is going to take you so far, Matt. I mean, really, like you're not just one of those entrepreneurial guys that like, oh, I'm going to do this really quick and then I'm going to get an exit and I'm going to make a lot of money. Like that's not, like, you haven't even mentioned that in this podcast, which really just confirms that your real passion is figuring out how to just make things better. Like, wouldn't it be nice if, and helping people. Like, you can just feel the passion on you. Like, if I can make this little thing, and every electrician has one of these in their toolbox, like, this is going to really help their day out. Like, for you, that's the victory, right? If you make money and if you become a millionaire along the way, cool, that's great. But what it's really about for you is solving their problems, and you have so much passion around that. And I think that's why you're going to continue to be successful, and that's why people are going to invest in you too, because they're going to meet you and they're going to feel that passion and see your skill set and your knowledge, and you're going to be like, okay, yeah, who do I need to write the check to? I can't wait till you get out to Boulder. We're going to connect for happy hour dinner and have fun when you get out here, especially if you're going to be out here this summer. We'll have to connect. You said you're an outdoor guy. Hey, in the summertime, I'll go up to the mountains probably 10, 15 times and go camping. So when you need a break and you're like, geez, I just need to relax for 12 hours, I'll call you. I'll take you up there.
I already got the bed in the back of my Subaru, and I'm
sweet.
A skier, former ski racer, coach ski racing. And so having to move to Boulder mid-February I applied to a bunch of programs, and this is the one I got into. It just so happened to be in Boulder.
Sweet. That's so funny. You mentioned the bed in the back of the Subaru. I have a Jeep, and I have one of those mattresses that's designed specifically for my Jeep. So when I go up, I crash in the back. It's funny you mentioned
on my YouTube channel. It's one of the most popular videos is building a bed in the back of a 2019 Subaru.
Love it. Matt, so great to talk to you. Congratulations on everything. Wish you the best. By the way, for all the listeners, it's Flex Solutions, so flxsolutions.com. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.